Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of Runes and Red Tape, the storytelling channel where magic meets paperwork and epic quests have to be approved in triplicate. Oh, and please remember to hit that like and subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything and it really helps the channel out. Right then, this week's story is called The Happy Udder. Thomasina sneezed. The dusty ancient parchment irritated her nasal cavities almost as much as her professor of thaumaturgy, Blastmere's latest obsession. "Milk transmutation," he called it. She called it butter. She smiled to herself as she looked at her professor. The faculty saw what it wanted to see, and that was just fine with her. She did resent having to dress up in boys' clothes and answer to the name Tommy. It was, however, a small price to pay to become a trainee wizard. She had, however, determined that the growing of a beard was not something she was prepared to attempt. "Transmutation, Tommy!" Blastmere bellowed as he opened the small wooden box that a servant had been turning for the last 30 minutes or so. Greedily he spread the yellow contents on a warmed scone. "It's total magic, on a par with turning lead into gold, only vastly superior on a scone." He smiled. "And now for my next trick." He stuffed the whole scone into his mouth. Tommy shook her head. "It's just fat globules sticking together." Her words fell on deaf ears. She turned to the penultimate page in the vellum of Volume 1 of Arcane Curiosities. Her ancient language skills were limited, but the pictures showed a churning box, a pile of stuff, and a large wooden barrel with a wooden stopper at the bottom. She motioned for Blastmere to help with the translation. Blastmere was a self-confessed expert in the ways and words of the ancient ones. Tommy watched as the professor's index finger moved carefully across the page. He began muttering indecipherable words, and when he finished, he slumped back into his chair. He was silent for a moment, collecting his thoughts. "Well, I simply don't believe it," he paused. "We've been getting it wrong all this time. The butter is merely a byproduct. It's the remaining liquor that we need to keep. That is the magic elixir." "Well, yes. Everyone knows that. Buttermilk is never thrown away," Tommy said. No, this is more than that." Blastmere took a deep breath. "It says that if we throw a few things together with the buttery liquid and recant a magic spell, it will produce an elixir that makes you feel happy. Now that's magic." Tommy was still staring at the page, trying to juggle the words together in such a way that they made sense to her. She decided that more practice would be required. She pointed to some words that had a red line painted underneath them. "What does this say exactly? That looks like a warning." Standing up, Blastmere gave it a cursory glance before declaring, "Oh, nothing important." He quickly changed the subject. "Come now, I want you to go to the market and buy these things while I go and tell Archmage Quibblewick about my discovery and how we could use it to celebrate the forthcoming 250th anniversary of the university." He hastily wrote down several ingredients and handed it to Tommy. He waved her away. "Oh, and don't forget to sell the butter to pay for it all." After lectures were finished for the day, Tommy found herself in Blastmere's private study. It was stuffed with dead things, dried things, and bottled liquids of various colours. Books were randomly spread across tables and chairs. In the middle of the floor was a large oak barrel. It was stamped property of the Dog and Duck, the name of the local inn. The open cask was nearly full of a watery white liquid. It had the distinctive, tangy smell of slightly old buttermilk. "Good boy, Tommy," Blastmere interrupted. "Did you get everything?" Tommy nodded. "Honey, malted grains and apple skins, just as you requested." She smiled. "I couldn't just buy apple skins, though. I had to buy the apples whole, but on the plus side, there'll be plenty of fruit pies in the canteen this week." Blastmere wasn't listening. He began to stir the contents. He gestured to Tommy to start adding the ingredients slowly. Once done, he placed the lid back on the barrel. "And now I need to cast the spell." He closed his eyes. "Winds of the east, blow the dark clouds away. Sun of the south, bring a warm, golden day." Tommy interrupted. "Sir, why are you using the sky-clearing weather spell?" Blastmere opened one eye. "Magic, my dear boy, is mostly confidence." He closed his eye and carried on with his incantation. Tommy left, shaking her head, but still determined to find out what the words above the red line actually meant. The following week, the Unseeing University celebrated its 250th anniversary, a milestone that the faculty intended to mark with maximum self-importance and minimum actual work. When Blastmere presented his great wooden vat to Archmage Quibblewick and the rest of the High Council of Wizards, he did not refer to its origins or its recipe. Instead, he stood upon the dais. He bowed theatrically before sweeping his velvet robes grandly and announcing, "My distinguished and learned colleagues, after many decades of research, I have finally found the lost sacred nectar, the ceremonial elixir of long-forgotten wisdom, the drinking of which opens our hearts and minds to the wonders of the universe." He raised his arms. "Tonight I give you the elixir of the Happy Udder." Not a single academic questioned him. To question Blastmere would imply they hadn't already read about the elixir in some small, obscure, dusty tome, and no wizard would ever admit ignorance. "Ah, yes," the aged Professor of Arcane Metaphysics murmured, peering over his spectacles at the thick, bubbling, aggressively pungent white liquid. "The Happy Udder. I believe I wrote a monograph on it in my youth. As I recall, it has fascinating spiritual properties." "Oh, quite," chimed Quibblewick. "A truly elevated beverage for an intellectually expanded evening." He dipped his chalice into the liquid. The rest of the faculty did the same before he offered them all a toast. "Eat, drink, and be happy. Very happy." Another wizard commented on how they too had written a paper extolling the virtues of the Happy Udder, while his colleague confessed to having peer-reviewed the very same essay. Tommy was still in the basement of the library. Her lavender-scented candle helped disguise the musty, damp smell of the airless chamber. It had taken her nearly an hour to find what she was looking for, a dummy's guide to the arcane language of the Ancient Ones. She cross-referenced the words written above the red line in the Arcane Curiosities tome. The actual translation advised, "Use with extreme caution and never consume undiluted. Will cause euphoria, poor judgment, singing, and spontaneous magical discharge." She slammed it shut and ran to the faculty party. She burst in, but she was too late. No one seemed to notice her presence. She grabbed Blastmere by the arm. "Please tell me you added 10 times as much goat's milk to your magic brew." Blastmere tried to look at her, but he couldn't focus properly. "Tommy," he slurred, "where have you been? Look, everyone's very happy." He hiccuped. Tommy waved her hand across her face. She looked at the rest of the senior wizards. They looked the same, and increasingly unsteady on their feet. The Professor of Arcane Metaphysics offered Tommy a drink before putting his arm around Blastmere and taking him away. Tommy sipped the liquid and recoiled in horror. She took it immediately to her friend, Hearth the Dragon, who she had previously installed as the university's heating engineer. She opened the North Tower's basement door. The Dragoness lit the liquid. There was a green tinge to the expected blue flame. "The bloody idiots have invented Milky Mets." Tommy laughed as Hearth handed her a steamy cup of hot chocolate. "There's going to be a lot of very poorly old men in the morning." By 9 o'clock the descent into chaos was well underway, though it was maintained with immense, slurred dignity. The Archmage was currently residing inside a decorative stone fountain in the quad, completely drenched, yet holding his glass aloft. "I assure you, Tommy," Quillwick belched, "I am not indisposed. I am merely aligning my terrestrial vectors with the fluid dynamics of the universe. It is an ancient ritual of deep spiritual enlightenment." He then slumped forward and began to softly vomit pure, glowing green ectoplasm into the water. Inside the great dining hall, the magic wards had completely detached themselves from the walls and were drifting around like glowing jellyfish. The enchanted portraits of long-dead sorcerers had abandoned their historical dignity and were locked in a roaring, off-key rendition of a tavern song about a big-bosomed maid and a goblin. Professor Nightshade from the necromancy department accidentally resurrected a hat. He seemed pleased and confused in equal measure. "But the logic is flawed," roared Higginsbottom, the Professor of Divinity, pointing a trembling wand at a mahogany dining table. The chair, which had grown small wooden ears due to a stray, localized spell, did not respond. "You mock me, sir," the Professor yelled, slamming his fist on the table. "Your silence on the matter of cheese string theory proves your utter contempt for the pursuit of intellectual excellence." Nearby, 2 arch-wizards were engaged in a fierce, slow-motion magical duel. One would wave his wand, accidentally turning the other's white beard into fluorescent pink, only for the other to retaliate by levitating his opponent to exactly 6 inches off the floor and spinning him around until he too threw up. Tommy dodged a stray bolt of pink lightning that had shot out from Blastmere's sleeve while the old man was fast asleep, snoring face down on a plate of boiled cabbage. She decided to get up early in the morning, having first made sure that the main wards protecting the university remained intact. When she stepped out into the square the following morning, it looked like it had been hit by a very festive tornado. The entire faculty lay scattered across the lawns and corridors, snoring in deep alcohol and magic-induced comas. Armed with a wheelbarrow, a mop, and a bucket of counter-charms, she got to work. She coaxed the emotional weeping stone gargoyles back onto the roof. She turned Quibblewick's ectoplasm back into water, She changed the pink beard back into white and politely informed the mahogany chair that its academic career was over. The chair showed relief at having had its ears removed. Unsure what to do with the hat, she placed it in the lost items cupboard in the students' common room. Using the wheelbarrow, she returned Blastmere to his own private chambers. Before returning and repeating the exercise until all of the faculty members were safely lying on their own beds, sleeping and blissfully unaware of what had befallen each of them, she left a small sachet of pain relief along with a glass of water beside each bed. Once everything was back to normal, she went to Blastmere's lab. She took the ancient parchment and fed it to her small, fire-breathing lizard friend. By noon, the faculty began to blink open their bloodshot eyes. Tommy braced herself for the reprimands, the horror, and the inevitable shame. Instead, the archmage staggered into the hall, clutching his temples and looking around in absolute awe. "Genius," the Chancellor whispered. "Utter genius." He paused. "Or should I say, utter genius?" He forced a laugh. "Sir?" Tommy asked, holding her mop. "The 250th anniversary gala," Cribberwick beamed, though the smile clearly hurt his jaw, "was a complete triumph. Everyone was indeed very happy, and we had several breakthroughs. Professor Higginsbottom swears he discovered a spell to animate furniture, and I successfully communed with the water spirits." He paused as he pulled out a small scroll from his cape pocket. "This morning, the Ministry of Magic has written to say that they've doubled our annual funding. They describe the evening as boldly experimental." Just then Blastmere wandered in, looking terribly pale but profoundly smug. "I told you, Tommy, it's magic. The Happy Udder has elevated this institution to new heights." Tommy leaned on her mop. "Yes, Professor," she smiled. "It was a truly spiritual experience. I can only hope that you have remembered what you did with the old manuscript." The end. Hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please like, subscribe, and I'll catch you next time. Till then, take care and stay safe.